Okay. We paused at the middle of another chapter. We started 8,
Verse 30.
verse 30.
Am I right for a change?
Sharon, is he right?
He's right.
Okay.
Mark it down.
We'll circle this day on the calendar. Okay, Barbara.
Okay, Jeremiah 8:30.
Joshua.
Joshua.
They must start with J.
We'll start with
Sorry.
Joshua 8:30.
Okay.
You were just testing us.
Yeah.
Oh, I was confused. Okay. Then Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones on which no iron tool had been used. On it they offered to the Lord burnt offerings and sacrificed fellowship offerings. There, in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua copied on stones the law of Moses, which he had written. All Israel, aliens and citizens alike, with their elders, officials, and judges, were standing on both sides of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, facing those who carried it. The priests, who were Levites, half of the people stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of them in front of Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had formerly commanded when he gave instructions to bless the people of Israel. Afterward, Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessings and the cursings, just as it is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read to the whole assembly of Israel, including the women and children and the aliens who lived among them.
Okay. Interesting. The book of the law is mentioned 3 times in the passage that we read. It's mentioned once prior to that. In chapter 8, it's mentioned 4 times. Out of the whole book of Joshua, it is only mentioned 5 other times. So there seems to be here an emphasis on the book of the law. You know, we've not heard much about the book of the law. I mean, other than when we're getting the new or revised story. But here, the way the author of Joshua portrays it is there was a clear understanding that there was a book of the law. Now, we're not talking just the 10 Commandments. You know, this is the whole thing. And it says that he chiseled it out of stone.
Yeah.
Well, it's believed that he coated the stones with like a plaster
Oh,
so that it could be carved. To carve that whole book of the law out of stone
Yeah.
would take quite a while. But by covering it, you know, then they
that's
had it.
very interesting.
But it's really interesting here, just in the 5 verses from 30 to 35. It's mentioned 3 times. So, and something mentioned in the Bible 3 times
Means, yeah, that's a good number.
is, you know,
A sacred number.
you know, that's important stuff. So now let's go to Gibeon.
Dude.
Gibeon.
Gibson.
Gibson?
Gibeon?
Kurt Gibson?
Isn't that like the
That's the
Bible says?
Yeah.
Mine says G-I-B.
Probably not.
Oh,
Same
yeah.
one.
Gibeon.
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 Gibeon?
Gibeon.
That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what
I-
I've heard before.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll hear how about Gibeon handing out Bibles.
That's what it means.
Now when all the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, those in the hill country in the western foothills, and along the entire coast of the Great Sea as far as Lebanon, the kings of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, they came together to make war against Joshua and Israel. However, when the people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they resorted to a ruse. They went as a delegation whose donkeys were loaded with worn-out sacks and old wineskins, cracked and mended. The men put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their food supply was dry and moldy. Then they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal and said to him and the men of Israel, "We have come from a distant country. Make a treaty with us." The men of Israel said to the Hivites, "But perhaps you live near us. How then can we make a treaty with you?" "We are your servants," they said to Joshua. But Joshua asked, "Who are you and where do you come from?" They answered, "Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard reports of him, all that he did in Egypt and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, Sihon king of Heshbon and Og king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. And our elders and all those living in our country said to us, 'Take provisions for your journey, go and meet them and say to them, we are your servants, make a treaty with us.' This bread of ours was warm when we packed it at home on the day we left to come to you, but now see how dry and moldy it is. And these wineskins that we filled were new, but see how cracked they are, and our clothes and sandals are worn out from the very long journey." The men of Israel sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. Then Joshua made a treaty of peace with them to let them live, and the leaders of the assembly ratified it by an oath. 3 days after they made the treaty with the Gibeonites, the Israelites heard that they were neighbors living near them. So the Israelites set out, and on the third day came to their cities, Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them because the leaders of the assembly had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. The whole assembly grumbled against the leaders, but all the leaders answered, We have given them our oath by the Lord, the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them now. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live, so that wrath will not fall on us for breaking the oath we swore to them. They continued, Let them live, but let them be woodcutters and water carriers for the entire community. So the leaders' promise to them was kept. Then Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, Why did you deceive us by saying we live a long way from you, while actually you live near us? You are now under a curse. You will never cease to serve as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God. They answered Joshua, Your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you the whole land and to wipe out all its inhabitants from before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. We are now in your hands. Do to us whatever seems good and right to you. So Joshua saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. That day he made the Gibeonites woodcutters and water carriers for the community and for the altar of the Lord at the place the Lord would choose, and that is what they are to this day.
Okay. It's interesting that whoever's writing the book of Joshua had no problem telling the story that they got tricked. That somebody else came in, tricked them. But in telling that story, he told a story about Joshua and the Israelites. once we make a pledge, we don't go back on it. We may have been tricked into that pledge, but we're not going to undo it. We're not going to go in and destroy your cities. But we're not going to give you good jobs. You'll be woodcutters and water carriers. Well, another country could live with that.
Yeah.
Because that's much better. And what's interesting is, where were these people from? The neighboring community. I mean, you got to admit, they were pretty smart. Take in old moldy bread and sandals that were worn and wine skins that were cracked, and say, wow, we came a long way, but we heard about your God, and we'd like to make a treaty with you, call a truce. And Joshua says, okay, we'll enter into an agreement. And he doesn't change his mind on that, which is really shows compassion even when he's been fooled. And I think that human nature is, when someone fools me, I want to find a way to get back.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the kind of Bible story that you could tell the kids. Because we all get tricked one time or another. So, all right, and Barbara, you're doing a wonderful job with those names.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, you do good.
Thank you.
So let's move into chapter 10.
Now Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had taken Ai and totally destroyed it, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and that the people of Gibeon had made a treaty of peace with Israel and were living near them. He and his people were very much alarmed at this, because Gibeon was an important city, like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and all its men were good fighters. So Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, appealed to Hohan, king of Hebron, Piram, king of Jarmuth, Japhia, king of Lachish, and Deber, king of Eglon. Come up and help me attack Gibeon, he said, because it has made peace with Joshua and the Israelites. Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, joined forces. They moved up with all their troops and took up positions against Gibeon and attacked it. The Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, "Do not abandon your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us, because all the Amorite kings from the hill country have joined forces against us." So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including all the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hand. Not one of them will be able to withstand you." After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel, who defeated them in a great victory at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road going up to Beth-horon and cut them down all the way to Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel on the road down from Beth-horon to Azekah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them from the sky, and more of them died from the hailstones than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "O sun, stand still over Gibeon. O moon, over the valley of Ajalon." So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it is written in the book of Jashar. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky, delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a man. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal.
Okay, let's pause there for just a minute because a couple things have happened that are significant. One, because of the treaty, Joshua is now going to defend the Gibeons. And, that again reinforces that commitment that he had with those people. They just said, hey, Joshua, you got to help us. We're being attacked by 5 kings from the north. And we know that Joshua had a pretty significant army because he really wiped out Ai. And so that shows the physical power that Joshua has. But in verse 12 and 13, the Lord God gave the Amorites up to Israel. Joshua spoke to the Lord with all Israel listening. Stop sun over Gibeon. Halt moon over the Ajalon valley. And the sun stopped, and the moon stood still until he defeated the enemies. And it says you can find this written in the book of Jasher. The sun stopped in its tracks in mid-sky, just sat there all day. There's never been a day like that before or since. And here's the important part. God took orders from a human voice.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Joshua is telling God what to do.
Yeah.
Which gives you some insight into the relationship that Joshua has with God. It was unlike the relationship that Moses had with God. Moses would go to God and say, the people are hungry. And God said, well, I'll send manna, they can collect it 1 day's worth, but they can't store it. Or, they need water. And he tells Moses to, strike the stone. This is different. This is where Joshua is saying, God, stop the sun. So, it's not like saying, give us water from the stone. He's saying, stop the sun. Let the moon stand still. And
Isn't stopping the sun recorded somewhere else in the Bible? And I can't. We're missing 2 days, that one, and the other one, I can't think where it is.
Well, the sun went dark at the crucifixion.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Maybe that's what I'm thinking about.
and I think that what happened was that was actually an eclipse, which is kind of funny because I was in seminary and I was walking back to my apartment. I'd gone to my apartment and I walked down to the office to pay our rent. I was walking back and we had an eclipse. And we were just studying this in the seminary. And all of a sudden it starts getting darker and darker and darker. And I'm thinking, I'll be darned. So, it was just one of those things that happened after I had been studying it, and it sort of reinforced to me. It didn't get pitch black, but it sure got dark. It wasn't a total eclipse, but it had to be 90% because it was, car lights were popping on, and porch lights were popping on. But that kind of power that Joshua is represented as having, and it's not, and again, whoever wrote Joshua says, don't believe me. You can also find this written in the book of Jasher.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just me. Several people have written about this. So, when you're on trial, you want a good witness. And if anybody's going to question this, go to the book of Jasher because it's confirmed there.
Do you have one of those in your library?
No, I don't. But it was, God took orders from a human voice. truly, God fought for Israel. So, okay, Barbara, let's,
Where are you at?
What we're starting.
16.
16. Now the 5 kings had fled and hidden in the cave at Makkedah. When Joshua was told that the 5 kings had been found hiding in the cave at Makkedah, he said, "Roll large rocks up to the mouth of the cave, and post some men there to guard it. But don't stop. Pursue your enemies, attack them from the rear, and don't let them reach their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand." So Joshua and the Israelites destroyed them completely, almost to a man. But the few who were left reached their fortified cities. The whole army then returned safely to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah, and no one uttered a word against the Israelites. Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me." So they brought the 5 kings out of the cave, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. When they had brought these kings to Joshua, he summoned all the men of Israel and said to the army commanders who had come with him, "Come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings." So they came forward and placed their feet on their necks. Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Be strong and courageous. This is what the Lord will do to all the enemies you are going to fight." Then Joshua struck and killed the kings and hung them on 5 trees, and they were left hanging on the trees until evening. At sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the trees and threw them into the cave where they had been hiding. At the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks, which are there to this day.
Okay, pause again for just a minute.
Makes you wonder, is that really true?
That-
I mean, is the cave still there with the rocks?
Well,
Wait.
that was the day they wrote the book. This book, not the day right now.
Yeah.
Not the one we're reading it.
Yeah, we, I don't think they, I'm sure as an archaeologist trying to find,
Yeah.
they've been looking for the ark and they're probably looking for this cave also.
5 kings.
But you notice that Joshua hung them
Yeah.
on 5 trees where they remained until evening. Who else did they hang on a cross who remained there? And the Jews said, "He's got to come down before evening." So, this is a tradition that's dating back to the time of Joshua. And we know that for the Jews, it was the Passover with Jesus. They didn't want him hanging there during the Passover. But, for all we know, that was the Passover coming up here. But they were not going to leave him hanging overnight. And Jews traditionally try to bury someone before sundown. I mean, that's an important thing for them. So, but they put those large stones at the mouth of the cave, and the kings are still in there. What stands out to me there is they rolled a large stone against the cave where Jesus was, but he was not still in there.
That's true.
These people were still in there. So I'm not saying that the author of Joshua had a copy of Matthew or Luke. But, somehow, when you got people in caves with rocks pulled up against them, I always think, is there some kind of reference here to a New Testament story? We just don't know. Okay, let's go on.
One of my friends who died last week, in the state of Kansas, you can bury a person on your private property if you bury them within 24 hours. So they buried her at the farm within 24 hours. It was before sundown, but I don't know if that was part of it or not.
I think that 24-hour thing is to avoid spread of disease. That if you sit if you're dead and you know, you're just laying there, you just,
Yeah,
there's no easy way to say it. You start
Flies.
rotting.
the
Yeah.
flies.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know,
The
when,
embalming process wasn't what it is today.
no. In fact, this time they were probably not doing any embalming. Embalming was happening in Egypt.
Mummification is a form of embalming.
Pardon?
Mummification is a form of embalming.
Yes, yes. But it was only the kings that were getting embalmed. I mean, regular people. And so many of these stories, you know, when how these people are killed.
Yeah.
No one's going around picking up the bodies. So,
They didn't have big backhoes
no,
and
no,
big equipment in those days, did they?
they did not. Okay, no survivors.
That day Joshua took Makkedah. He put the city and its king to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors. And he did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Makkedah to Libnah and attacked it. The Lord also gave that city and its king into Israel's hand. The city and everyone in it Joshua put to the sword. He left no survivors there. And he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Libnah to Lachish. He took up positions against it and attacked it. The Lord handed Lachish over to Israel, and Joshua took it on the second day. The city and everyone in it he put to the sword, just as he had done to Libnah. Meanwhile, Horam, king of Gezer, had come up to help Lachish, but Joshua defeated him and his army, until no survivors were left. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Lachish to Eglon, and they took up positions against it and attacked it. They captured it that same day and put it to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it, just as they had done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron and attacked it. They took the city and put it to the sword together with its king, its villages, and everyone in it. They left no survivors. Just as at Eglon, they totally destroyed it and everyone in it. Then Joshua and all Israel with him turned around and attacked Debir. They took the city, its king, and its villages and put them to the sword. Everyone in it they totally destroyed. They left no survivors. They did to Debir and its king as they had done to Libnah and its king and to Hebron. So Joshua subdued the whole region, including the hill country, the Negev, the western foothills and the mountain slopes, together with all their kings. He left no survivors. He totally destroyed all who breathed, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua subdued them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and from the whole region of Goshen to Gibeon. All these kings and their lands Joshua conquered in one campaign, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal.
Okay,
My goodness, that's just a lot of blood
yeah.
and mess.
You know, and a lot of dead people. I mean, those cities are going to smell if they don't bury them.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if there were cleanup crews.
I don't know.
Sorry.
You know, if they carried body bags.
Yeah.
You know, it's. I find this interesting because all of these cities were tribes, and one city knew people in the other city. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, people who live in Hutch know people who live in South Hutch. We know people who live in Burton. We know people who live in Beulah. And, you know, there's probably even intermarriages between these. So it's not like these people were all anti-Israeli. they had their own gods, and Joshua just going in and wiping them out. Which, I now, when I look at what happens today, where Israel is, fighting to take Gaza, and they say, we're gonna take it, and they've taken other areas. I've always thought, well, God had given Israel to the Israelites. Now we're finding out that Israel, they conquered a lot of other tribes. They added to their territory. And Joshua was one heck of a soldier. I mean, he had a tremendous army, and he was going in. Now, on the other hand, these communities may not have been armed. They may not have had soldiers. They were just peaceful folk.
When they say a city here, obviously there's going to be some agriculture to support that. Were they more like smaller communities? They weren't cities in terms of what we think of as cities.
No, it wouldn't be like Jerusalem, which would be a big city with the wall. These are just small cities, like Beulah. I'm always kind of amazed when I go to Beulah, downtown Beulah. It's like a city block. Burton is even more. And I mean, these are just small. How many of you have been to Cleveland, Kansas? Yeah, you went to look at the
Carver, railroad name, but Cleveland.
Yeah.
There's still a grain elevator.
Yeah, there's a grain elevator.
And there's some big windmills.
Yeah. And
wind turbines, I should call them.
And a post office.
Post office still there?
I think so. I mean, that's, I would, when I first moved out here, and, I was doing all 4 churches, you go to Medicine Lodge, and we had people who were members of the church that lived west of Medicine Lodge. And, I went out and called on those people, and she was the postmaster. The wife was the postmaster. And that's about all there was in town, was the post office. But it was a little burg, and boy, they were proud of their town.
What was the name of that little burg? Do you remember?
I'm trying to think what it is.
There's Lake City and Sun City and
I think it was Sun City.
Sun City.
And then is Sun City, is that where
That's where the mines are for the gypsum.
yeah. Where Buster's?
That's in Sun City.
That is Sun City. Okay, they weren't in Sun City. Sun City, they live south of Sun City, but Sun City, if it weren't for Buster's,
Yeah.
That's all ranch ground now. There was no
Yeah.
cultivated grounds.
so it's those little burgs.
Meanwhile, back to
I'm assuming that these places that have been conquered are pretty much like those cities.
And so as we look at current news, then is Putin doing the same thing?
Yeah.
Believes that has a right to Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
and Crimea and all of
See, Ukraine, Crimea were all at one time part of the USSR.
it. I know.
And then when USSR became Russia, these other little areas left. Georgia, which I always found fascinating because when you talk about Georgia, I always think of one of the early colonies.
Yeah.
But, and now Putin, who overthinks his importance in history, he's trying to bring these countries back into the fold.
Apparently, there's some long-standing cultural differences between, Georgia and Ukrainians.
Yeah, and that's why they left.
The ancient steppes of the grain-growing area.
Yeah, well, that's why they left, because they were completely different in terms of society than Russia. So, and Russia was kind of, at that point, was happy to get rid of them.
A lot of the Mennonite people that came here came from Ukraine.
Yeah.
That region.
Yeah. And, you know, at one point, Ukraine was a beautiful city. I mean, I think Miss Ukraine was Miss World several times. I mean, they're very attractive people. And the same thing with Georgians. So you've got all of these things, and so, you know, if Putin is saying, well, they belong to me, well, is that different than what Hitler said when,
Yeah.
you know, he was building tanks like crazy, and he needed a place to park them, so he parked them in Poland.
Yeah.
So, you know, and what a country is really, it's hard to define in some ways.
Has there been much study about the culture of, say, the Ammonites or the Hittites? There really isn't anything known about that. is
Not a
there?
whole lot, really. I mean, they, you know, they all stem from the same people. I would imagine if you stood an Israelite and an Ammonite and some, you know, some of the other ites,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to say, well, I can
Okay.
tell this one. I mean, it's not like,
It was their religion.
you know, it was, you know, that God had chosen the Israelites, and these other people were worshiping Baal, and, you know, I think, you know, in many ways they were just happy-go-lucky people. You know, they were happy with their life.
It's almost a shame they were all killed.
Yeah,
You kind of feel sorry for them.
Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to promote anti-Semitism, but, you know,
Couldn't they have just converted them?
But that was not unique to the Israel. I mean, all the different cultures were.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah, the Egyptians were conquering lands,
Babylonians.
and, you know, then the Babylonians came along and they conquered the Romans. The only one of the major differences is when the Romans conquered, they didn't say you got to believe like us. You just have to pay us the tribute.
Mhm.
I mean, I think in terms of being conquerors, the Romans were good. They built roads.
Oh, my God.
They instituted peace. They built aqueducts. I am amazed
Oh.
whenever I go to Europe, some of those aqueducts are still standing.
Mhm.
You know, in Portugal, you know, Portugal is not that close to Rome. I mean,
No.
you've got to go through Spain into Portugal.
Across the mountains.
Yeah, across the mountains. And I saw several aqueducts.
Huh.
And I remember asking the guy who was our guide, are they still working? He goes, oh, of course they are. That's why they're still up. And you know, we support them. But, you know, it's just amazing. They built those darn things without laser levels, without high lifts, you know, without poured concrete.
Yeah.
So, and they had to figure it. To move the water, they didn't drop them enormous amounts. You know, it would be like it would drop a quarter of an inch for every 100 yards. So, I mean, the water didn't gush, but it just constantly flowed.
A lot of pretty significant engineering to
Yes,
design all that.
yes. I mean, I can't understand why universities in Rome aren't turning out the best civil engineers in the world, because historically, that's what they were. I mean, it's amazing. And a lot of those Roman streets are still holding up. And not only, I lived in Kingman, we had brick streets. Well, we have them here in Hutch, and they're falling apart, and they're replacing them with asphalt. And people are saying, oh, it's terrible, we like that bricks. Yeah, but it's costing a fortune to
Yeah.
keep those brick streets working.
Couldn't ride a bike down it anymore.
No. So, you know, it's amazing, you know, what these people were able to accomplish.
But it seems to me that I don't know, maybe we overlook it now, but I understand people who feel like the Jews act entitled because all this history,
Mm-hmm.
it's like they were taught that they were better than anybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. That's a good statement, yeah.
They had God on their side. They felt they're God's chosen people. And, there is, and it's a real difficult balance to not sound like an anti-Semite.
I know.
But, at the same time, here they are destroying these cities and towns. Now, the only thing that balances that is when we get into the prophets, later into the kingdoms, the Babylonians come in and do the same thing. Although the Babylonians, unlike what's happening here, the Babylonians came in and they took the good people. They took the skilled craftsmen. They took the intelligent people off to Babylon and left the rest. But it's hard, like at Bondi Beach, where
Oh,
this father and son just start shooting people because they're Jews. I don't understand that.
No.
And even in this country, when apparently, I don't know what the truth is yet, but the guy that shot up,
Brown
Brown,
University.
that somebody said he yelled, "Allah Akbar."
Really?
Well, gee whiz, they're just, how can you hate someone because of their heritage? I'm just thankful Episcopalians haven't upset a lot of people.
Really?
I worried when I went to England. I wouldn't fought, I was always for the crown.
God save the Queen.
Yeah. All right, we're going to pick up with chapter 11 after the new year.
Oh,
You all have a happy Merry Christmas and a Happy New
You
Year.
too.
You too.